Well, and I think that's such a great point, especially when we talk about networking. You know, how long some of those networking cycles take to become a business opportunity or to become a job interview or whatever it is. And the vast majority of them are just going to be connections. And I shouldn't say just because they're so important, but the friend connections and the professional connections are so critical to our network and to just being successful that you can't discount that, even if it never becomes any kind of quote unquote money-making opportunity or a job offer or anything like that. The future of fun begins at IAAPA FEC Summit, January 19th through the 21st, 2025 in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Join FEC and LBE professionals for an immersive experience packed with strategic insights, networking, and behind-the-scenes EDUTours of unique local facilities.
Learn how to make your FEC stand out in a crowded market and explore the latest trends designed to elevate your business.
Build valuable connections and leave inspired with actionable strategies for success.
Click the link in the show notes to reserve your spot today.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm tired. How are you?
I am doing fantastically, but why are you tired?
Well, it's the holidays. It's, a lot going on, a lot happening. And I think, after IAAPA Expo every year, there's a feeling of fulfillment in my soul as well as exhaustion in my body.
I would totally agree with that. I would totally agree with that. Well, I have a question about IAAPA, and I know we're going to be talking a lot about our takeaways today, but my question is, we put together that Thrival guide based on so many great suggestions from people in the industry and so many great pieces of advice. I'm curious, did we follow that advice?
Let's see. I made sure to eat lunch every day.
Good.
I wore shoes that were comfortable enough. I had to remind myself to drink lots of water. So I actually really appreciate that suggestion. I did my best to carve out time to hit the show floor without much of an agenda. That fell through almost every time and really minimized the amount of time I had on the show floor. But also I had a very structured plan throughout the week to make sure I knew when my meetings were, when my meetings weren't, how long my meetings were going to be. I intentionally scheduled fewer meetings this year and blocked more time for them for either the meetings to go longer or to have some buffer time in between to use the bathroom or something, or take notes or drink more water, which then led to usually having to then go to the bathroom after.
Yes.
Or however long after, right? I think I did my best. How about you?
I did as well. Shoes being a really important piece of it. I wore completely comfortable shoes that really helped as I was walking around and on my feet for so long during the week. There were some suggestions about making the experience your own, and I really feel like I did that as well. Like there were some things that I had, done in meetings and things like that I really felt like I was, for lack of a better term, in control of my experience, and I could say yes to certain things, I could say no to certain things. Like you, I had fewer meetings, but those buffer times, I was able to add in more. I was able to meet up with people that in the beginning of the conference or even before the expo, people would say, hey, we should meet up, right? And that's probably one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is we're going to have time to meet up during the week. So I was really intentional about trying to meet with as many people as we could, or that I could. And some, it just didn't work out. Some people, it was like a chance encounter that I happened to see someone and, oh, we should talk about something. And 20 minutes later, we're actually having, an actual conversation. So those kind of things, I think, because I was able to kind of make it my own and do my own thing. Now, I don't have a company that I'm there working for or representing, and I don't have a bunch of other people that I'm there with and, maybe following their lead and that type of thing. So maybe it's a little bit easier for me to do that, but I felt like being able to do that really enhanced the experience. And I feel like without making IAAPA 2 or 3 weeks long, I got out of it everything I needed to get out of it.
Good. I'm glad to hear
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So I feel like just, we're going to recap kind of some of our takeaways for the show, but I feel like I'm already excited for IAAPA Expo 2025. Even
Oh, I
just thinking of how we followed the advice from the Thrival Guide submitted by everybody and the things that you and I know, and we try to, I would say, improve our IAAPA Expo strategy every year and test new things at work and what could be improved.
Absolutely. And there's one other thing I'm doing that I want to make sure that we talk about, which is the follow-up, right? Because once IAAPA is done, it's like, what's next? So it's sending the messages, getting the LinkedIn connections and all that kind of stuff. I'm working through all the business cards I've gotten and making those connections and following up on the warm leads and those type of things. So I think that's another really, really critical piece is once it's done, yes, you're exhausted. Yes, your soul is full, but now it's time to do the real work after that.
And there is, a point that it is kind of challenging with the timing of Expo of being immediately before Thanksgiving, and then there's the few weeks of buffer at the time of this episode's release, leading into the holidays where a lot of people are really winding down for the year. It takes a lot of intentionality if you want to make things happen in the next calendar year. Otherwise, I also go into the show knowing I might be having conversations. I might be having conversations in November of 2024 that might not come to fruition until 2026 and beyond, of knowing timeline of being able to follow up with people as well as people plan their budgeting process for the following year as well.
Well, and I think that's such a great point, especially when we talk about networking. How long some of those networking cycles take to become a business opportunity or to become a job interview or whatever it is. And the vast majority of them are just going to be connections. And I shouldn't say just because they're so important, but the friend connections and the professional connections are so critical to our network and to just being successful that you can't discount that, even if it never becomes any kind of quote unquote money-making opportunity or a job offer or anything like that.
And to that point, and maybe this is a good segue into the takeaways. This wasn't one of the ones that I had on the list, but if you go into a show like IAAPA Expo or many other similar ones saying, I'm going to go in and I am going to close all these deals because I'm going to meet all these accounts and I'm going to sign all these contracts. And I say that because I had some conversations with people who this is my first time coming to IAAPA Expo. I sell this product and I really want to get Disney and Universal. Okay. We talked several years ago in an episode. I shared a story of someone who I knew at Disney who said, walking down the show floor and people just throw themselves at you and say, you need this product. And a guy selling wing nuts was like, oh, you work for Disney? You need wing nuts. Let me sell you wing. He's like, I'm not the guy who buys the wing nuts for Disney, right? And so with that said, if you say, okay, this industry is huge. Yes, if I'm a supplier and if I can get the big players, that would be the greatest thing imaginable. But look at all of maybe the small family owned and operated businesses. Look at the wide breadth of different types of attractions that are represented by IAAPA, not just the for-profit, but the cultural attractions and zoos and museums and aquariums. And they maybe all need what you have. And when you begin those relationships, then you find that, yes, it stretches out, it bubbles out over time. And you know that you're putting in the effort and planting those seeds. Many of them might not come to fruition, like you said, but many of them might come to fruition years down the road, and you'll thank your past self for establishing those early on.
Absolutely. And one other thing that, again, was not a takeaway, but now it is now that we're chatting
I think
is,
we're putting together the next Thrival Guide, actually, is what we're doing for 2025.
well, the chance to get together with people at IAAPA, have meetings, meet new people, all those type of things. It should not be the beginning or the end of the networking process or the business building process. It should just be another part of the process, right? It's a very cool, very fun, very intense, very soul-filling experience. But at the same time, like the meetings that you had been in contact, at least one of the meetings I remember seeing you in, you've been in contact with them long before this particular expo. So it's not like you're meeting for the very first time and saying, oh, hi, I'm Josh. This is what I do. This is an extension of that effort that you put in all year long. And yes, it's a great time to meet with people because you're in the same place. You just happen to be all in the same place. But it's not the beginning of the relationship. It's not the end of the relationship. It's a point in the middle where I think, yes, it's intense and there's a lot of excitement around it, but it's not the be all end all, if that makes sense. So I know we talk a lot about the expo being such a great experience, and it is. But at the same time, when you're talking about building a business and networking, it's part of the process. It's not the whole process.
And I think that that advice is key to whichever side of the coin you're on. If you're a supplier and trying to generate leads and get new business, or if you're on the operator side and you're trying to, whether it's build your career or be able to gain the resources that you can bring back to your business to be able to improve, whether it's operations, guest experience, leadership, marketing, wing nuts, trash cans, any and all of those of knowing that yes, this is a point along the process. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's good advice.
Absolutely. So what was one of your official takeaways that you actually wanted to bring up on the conversation?
First one at the top of my list. It's a takeaway, but it's also really a message to everyone who's watching or listening to this. And I want to thank our fans and those who have not only supported Attraction Pros, but hopefully have really gained something for themselves as well to be able to use, whether it's from a networking standpoint or to be able to improve their career development within the industry. And in particular, I want to talk about the meetup that we held on Sunday night. Usually it's the day everybody arrives. It's before the official expo begins. We saw a unique opportunity to host an event that was pretty much before the majority of other events. So a lot of people were seeing each other for the first time. We anticipated a certain amount of people, and we got between 3 and 4 times more the amount that we estimated. And it wasn't just the amount of people that were there, it was really who was there as well. And you and I knew a lot of people personally, and many people came up to introduce ourselves. And there are some people I feel like I've seen their names on LinkedIn, or they've liked to, or engaged with some of our content, like some of the posts, shared some of the things. But the amount of people that approached you or me, either individually or together, and mentioned how much they appreciated what we've done. To me, it's such a great sense of fulfillment. I even said multiple times, I said, I refresh our stat page and I can see dots on a line and we can see kind of the numbers part of it. But an event like we had, that meetup, really showed, okay, these are the faces, these are the people who are being positively impacted by the podcast. And so the amount of people that that came up to me and said, this, not only is this event incredible, but what we Attraction Pros are able to provide to the industry. I'm just very glad and very thankful that we're able to do it. And so I'm thanking the fans, but I'm also thanking the hundreds of people who we've interviewed on the show, who they're really the ones where the bulk of the insights are coming from. We just created this platform that allows people to have this resource to be able to improve their career.
Absolutely. I want to echo everything you just said. And I want to thank the people that were there. I want to thank the people who have listened and watched over the years, the people that give us a reason to keep doing this, even though we probably would, if 4 people were listening, but, just seeing the impact that we have. I mean, we talk about this all the time, whether it's guests, that are giving us feedback and saying, hey, you're doing a great job as a company. You want to keep doing that. When we hear people say, you guys are doing a great job on the podcast, of course, we want to keep doing that. We want to keep providing this service and providing these conversations that hopefully help people. What I was blown away with was how many people at the event and even after the event talked about not just the number of people, but the quality of people. I never expected that feedback, to be honest with you. Like, people would say, it was such a great mix of people that were there, people from all over, all different types of facilities and businesses, and from all over the world that were there, that were coming together. Yes, there was some free food and drinks, but it was also because they were there to, meet people that enjoyed the same things that they do. And to me, that's where the word community comes in. And I have to say, I actually learned something a little bit about myself that night, because one of the most fun things I had, or that I did that night, was connect people. Somebody would come up to me and we'd be talking about something, and, oh, you've got to meet this person. And I'd literally grab them by the arm, not dip, hard, but I would, scoot them over to a certain, I said, you've got to meet this person. This is this person. Or somebody would say, oh, I really appreciated that guest. Oh, they're here. Let me go introduce you. So I found I was doing that a lot during the evening, and it was super fun. It was super fun. So I think I mean, we say it when we say our tagline, which is "We are all attraction pros." I know you and I really believe that, but it's getting all those people together so that they can learn and network and grow from those connections as well. I thought that was just super fun for me. Not something I expected to have happen during that event.
Yeah, yeah, I love being able to see those moments as well. There have been times where, like you said, I'm talking to one person, then maybe I see someone else out of the corner of my eye, or they see me and they want to say hi to me, but I don't want to interrupt or end the conversation. But I realize it's a good connection. There have been times where I've said, "Oh, do you two know each other?" And then they start talking, and then the next thing I realize, I'm not even in the conversation anymore. And I think that's great when that happens. I can slink away. I can go start another conversation. But it's, oh, here's this connection that immediately sparked this amazing discussion between two people.
I can't tell you how many conversations I was talked out of. I don't know what the right
Yeah.
word is, but they just connected, and it was great. So I agree. So again, thank you to everybody who came. Thank you to everybody who's listening. We are all attraction pros, and we believe that wholeheartedly.
Yes, and we'll say it again in a little bit.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
All right, what do you got?
So one of my big takeaways from this conference was that the expo, well, a couple things kind of come to mind. First of all, being in person is good for business. I think that's just number one. Number two, that kind of relates to that, is that being in this environment is great for crazy ideas. And here's what I mean. I've got a couple of quick examples. So Monday night, I decided to do something that I'd never done before, which was I made dinner reservations at Maggiano's for 8, and I had no idea who was going to join me. I knew I was going to be there, and so I put the invitation out there on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I said, if you're going to be at the expo, you've got nothing to do Monday night, come join me for dinner. And the seats filled up relatively quickly. We had a great conversation. There were a couple people that have been on the podcast. Christy Tozer was there. Eric Fluitt was there. Dave Mignani, that we both know, was there. But we also, the gentleman that I think really sticks out in my mind is a gentleman named Kyle, who's from Texas. This is his first time coming to the expo. He's he's an engineer, so he's a bit of an introvert, right? But he said, he and I have been connected on LinkedIn for quite a while, and he said, I just thought this would be a kind of a low-key, safe way to meet some people and start the week off. And he sent me an email probably a week or so after the conference, and he said that was one of the highlights of his week. And just to be able to have, again, it's that connection piece, right? You're connecting with people, and to have people come together that some might have knew each other sort of tangentially, some may have never heard of each other, but just to have this conversation and this meal together, how powerful that can be when you're eating with someone. And it was just sort of this crazy idea. So I want to do this again. If you're listening and you're going to Ames, watch out for that one, because I'm going to do it at Ames when I'm there in Orlando in January. But it was just such a great opportunity to meet with people. And that wasn't the only sort of crazy idea that kind of popped up. There was another one where I had this really weird idea for a leadership symposium that had to do with fear. And I'm just going to leave it there because it's in process, but I met with somebody who was a previous guest. I'm going to leave that unsaid just because I want to keep it kind of under wraps while we're working on it. But there was such a yes and vibe to the whole conference, and especially to the conversation that we had about this potential partnership. That, again, I think it's just a great opportunity to get some crazy ideas out there. People are in usually a really good mood, a really kind of open mood to trying new things. The random 8, as I call it, random 8, ATE, for the dinner thing. This new project that hopefully is gonna grow some legs and get somewhere. I just think those kind of ideas are great to have and to be able to share. And so maybe the bottom line here is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to share those ideas. Don't be afraid to reach out and find those little things that maybe you've never done before. Maybe you don't know of anybody else that's done it before, but there's going to be somebody at IAAPA that says yes.
So if you were not being afraid to start something focused on fear, I'll just
Yeah,
I'll just come full circle with that. That's
perfect.
super interesting, and I cannot wait to learn more about that. I hope it does grow 8 legs.
It might. It
I
might.
I want to comment on your dinner on Monday night at Maggiano's because when you announced that you were doing it, uh, I agreed that it was a crazy idea. I was even wondering what is Matt's like what's his goal with this? Is this a sales thing? Is this a business development thing? You had pretty much you had no objectives. You had no ulterior motive of hosting this dinner, right? It was just I've got 7 spots open. Let me know if you want to come. You had no idea what that night was going to be like.
No.
And I appreciate you sharing the story about Kyle and the importance of, like you said, creating that safe space for networking. If it is your first IAAPA Expo and if you're going by yourself and you don't know anybody, it would absolutely be daunting. I mean, that's why we put together
Yeah.
the rival guide to be able to help people understand. But if you're there, whether it's solo or even there, with your company, you've got some time to separate out. The question is, what do I do and how do I meet people? And you really created that opportunity for people to be able to do that. And what was I going to say? I was going to go somewhere else with this.
Bring
That
it around.
yeah, bring it around is that uh, it likely, and like you said, it was one of the biggest highlights of his week, and that you did that because it was, to your point, a crazy idea of why don't I just try it? Why don't I test it out? On Monday night, there are plenty of other things that you could have done and the 7 other people could have done. There are plenty of receptions hosted by IAAPA or hosted unofficially by other sponsors, by other companies. And you really took it upon yourself to say, to kind of do the opposite of the Sunday night event of, okay, here's something that is extremely small and intimate and is an inch wide and a mile deep with 7 people who I don't even know who they're going to be.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a through line with both of those events, the Attraction Pros event and also that one, and it's connection. And I
Mhm.
think this may show up on the resolutionary episode, but I think I'm recognizing how important that is, not for me just to make connections, but also for me to connect other people and how important that can be for them. And
Mhm.
I mean, I've been around for like 35 years now. I know a lot of people, and I don't say that boastfully. I say that because I've just stuck around, right? And I know a lot of people. So I enjoy connecting people. And if there's ever somebody that says, "Hey, do you know that person?" I'm like, if I don't, I probably know somebody who does, and I'd love to be able to make that connection. So yeah, I'm even starting to see a through line with those two things that really are connecting the dots for me.
Very cool. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So what's one of yours? Another
All
one of
right.
yours?
Before we started recording, we pointed out that some of the ones we have might blur and merge together, and this might just morph into one big like rubber band ball of an
Yeah.
IAP recap. So I want to thank the fans. And I know I said that already, and I was referring largely to the meetup and particularly to a lot of the people that came up to us and talked about the amazing way that they're able to kind of build that community, build that networking together. I also pointed out a little bit of the people who came up to us and talked about what the podcast has done for them specifically. And during the week, after one of my EDUTours, someone came up to me. Her name is Hillary. And she told me, she said, we met briefly at IAAPA Expo a few years ago. I think I recall, I think she was in one of our Attraction Pros lives early on. And she said at that time, this was pre-COVID. She said I was in the process of trying to open my business, open an FEC. And she said, since that time, obviously there was the pandemic, but she also said she was diagnosed with cancer. She was
Mm.
going through cancer treatments. And one of the things that she did to keep her mind occupied while going through cancer treatment was listen to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Wow.
And she kept she gave me this linear story here of from the last time we met at IAAPA at least 5 years ago or so, through everything that she's been through. And then by the end of it, she said, A, I'm cancer free, and B, I own an FEC.
Wow.
And I I choked up a little bit. I gave her a hug. I said thank you so much I mean, congratulations. On multiple fronts, and I'm thankful that we could play a small role in it. But I felt that that story was so impactful that I just had to share that's what and we hear often of people saying, we send out episodes to, to our employees if they think that it'll be, influential, or I was on a long road trip and had, 6 hours and, binged, several episodes and things like that. And all of those stories are incredible. And I just felt like I had to share this one.
And I'm so glad you did, because I think sometimes when we do what we do, when we are talking on Zoom, right, and you see the little dots on the stats, that it's hard to reconcile what kind of impact we might be having. And I'm not saying that we are curing cancer, we're just talking, right? We're having conversations that we would love to have with executives, with, leaders in the field, with each other. And I think that it can be hard for anybody sometimes to really get a full understanding of the impact that you're having in the world. And I think there's a bigger lesson here too, not only for us to never take that for granted, which I don't think we ever would, but even people in a leadership role where maybe you're feeling a little alone, right? Maybe you're feeling like I'm on an island, right? Or I'm leading my team, and there's a good relationship there, or I'm having to manage up, or whatever the case may be. But know that your consistent positive impact on the world is having an impact. And I think, again, that's what we have kind of striving for, when we first started this, we said we're going to do it consistently, right? And I think my biggest lesson, and I know we've talked about this before, is how consistency has built up our audience, and how consistency has built up a reputation for not being the gotcha guys, right? We're not the news people, right? We just want to have meaningful conversations with people. And if that resonates, great. I know we had a couple of conversations with people where they'll say, well, how big is your audience? And it's like, it's a niche audience, right? And we're happy with that. We're okay with that, because we feel like the people that are probably tuning in are really tuning in. They're really invested. They're really bought in. And again, I don't think that we can take that for granted. And again, I think the bigger lesson for anybody is that it can be hard sometimes if you're not getting the feedback to know what your impact is. But if you keep putting out positive energy, and you keep doing the right thing, and you know that you're, in your heart of hearts are, going in the right direction, it's going to pay off in the long run. So keep at it.
And I think part of it too is recognizing that you may not even always know the impact that you are making. That was one story from Hillary that she shared. There are probably many others too. And if I'm interpreting what you said correctly of how you responded, is that there's a leadership lesson in there as well. So for those who are managing their employees and trying to really make sure that there's a productive workforce, that knowing the impact you're making on their lives and what they're going to take with them too. And if I can turn that into also a guest experience lesson as well. And I know that this is something we've talked about on the podcast, when we talk about just creating those moments for those individuals who they might be on vacation, or they may be out with their family or their friends or their significant others, that those moments that you're creating from them might have a very positive impact on their life, and that's going to extend beyond the length of their visit. And you may or may not know, they may pull you aside, just like Hillary did with me after that EDUTalk. They may send an email, they may post a review. They may also keep it to themselves as well. So even if you can't see it right in front of you, knowing that, what did you say, consistently striving to make a positive impact will do so, and likely at scale.
Absolutely. And you may not always be successful, and that's okay, right? You keep trying. It's that old adage of, pull yourself up and, just keep trying, keep going. But that actually leads me into sort of a related takeaway, if I might, unless you have something else to go on that one.
No, I was just gonna
Okay,
just thank Hillary again for sharing that with me and for pulling me aside after that edge talk.
absolutely. Thank you, Hillary. We appreciate it. So this is sort of related to that from a networking perspective, and it's something that actually just happened to coincide with IAAPA, but wasn't necessarily IAAPA related. And that is that I left Universal in 2011. So 13 years ago, I left Universal. During kind of the IAAPA timeframe, maybe because I was posting so much and I was in people's feed, I don't know. Um, I had two people that I had worked with at Universal that were no longer at Universal that are now doing something else, reaching out to me about potential advice, guidance, business, training opportunities and that type of thing. And it just again got me thinking back to what we just talked about in terms of that cycle of, if you're putting positivity out there, which I absolutely tried to do when I was at Universal. I loved working there. And then seeing how that plays off down the road. Like it's been 13 years since I worked there. And even earlier than that, when I worked with, one of these folks, that it's incredible to see that you're still thought of, right? And again, I don't say this to be boastful. I say this to share a lesson that your impact today may not be felt today. And I think that goes back into what we were just talking about, because you may not see immediately that impact, but later on down the road, you're going to see that. And I guess if you really think about it from a lesson standpoint, that could be good or bad. Like if you're putting negativity out there, if you're, being a jerk to people, that's probably going to come back and bite you as well. So just think about your impact long term. Maybe that's the takeaway from that.
Yeah, and that, your time with one company working with certain individuals, that will extend long beyond working with those individuals. And I recounted similar experiences as well of people who've come up to me, whether it is, to establish a business relationship or at least from a networking standpoint. I would even tie it back to our meetup. I almost had like a mini college reunion while I was there of people who I went to school with: Dave Vignani, Doug Akers, Jen Rice, David Nicestro. There were a handful of people who were there who it was all of us almost kind of like recalibrating of like, wow, like we were young and early on in our careers and goal focused, but also like college students together, and now like we've established just this lifelong friendship, and we can all see where we are all at with with ourselves and be able to support each other too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So any other good takeaways from you?
Well, this is definitely going to morph into this as well, because this is, I think we're on the same kind of on the thread here. The compounding effect of networking. And so this is, like you said, you might establish those relationships early on and they might come back several years later. It also grows continuously upon itself over time. So we talked about kind of the importance of planting those seeds early on so that they may come to fruition somewhere in the future. The more you do that, there's an exponential opportunity that those will lead to something. And that could be a financial benefit, that could be networking, that could just be more friends and just close people who you're really connected with throughout the industry. So this was inspired by a career slam on Thursday afternoon, where there were how many mentors there? 50?
I think, yeah, probably 40 or 50. Yeah, a lot.
And all the mentors were at a small cocktail table. And then they brought in all the mentees, all the young college students or maybe recent grads. And it was almost like speed dating, right? They all moved in groups from table to table, and we got through as many as we could. And the mentors, we would stand at the table and start talking, and ask what questions they have and be able to, to give some guidance. And one of the pieces that I gave to almost every single one of the groups that I interacted with was networking has a compounding effect. And I said, let me put this into very real terms here. It was not that long ago. Okay, it was 17 years ago that I was on your side of the table. And it was in a different format. I remember there were larger round tables, and I think the mentors were the ones who would rotate, right? And I started looking around the room, and I recognized many other mentors in the room. And I said, over there, let's see. She and I, we were show ambassadors and we went to school together and we were close friends. We're still close friends today. That guy over there, we were show ambassadors. I remember, I was talking, I pointed to Jeremy Gruner and I said, I remember when he was a show ambassador, he talked about how passionately he wanted to design and create themed experiences when he was 20 years old and in college, and he later went on to work for Universal Creative. He was a critical piece of opening Hagrid's and Velocicoaster. Right when I saw that, or right when they saw that, like their eyes just lit up. And so now he's the executive producer for Franken Design. And I said, "Oh, that guy over there." I met him at my first career slam because he was a mentor. We stayed in touch. We stayed friends throughout the years. And for the last 7 years, we've hosted a podcast together. And obviously I was referring to you in that particular instance, right? So at my vantage point within the room, I had kind of a panorama of a pretty wide lens of the room, and I was able to say all those mentors over there. Many of us we were mentees together. We were ambassadors together. We were early on in our career, or we met each other so long ago. And now look at how this has continually come to fruition. I said many of the other people I met in the room, I met because of the podcast that you and I host, because, or at least we're able to form and establish, even further relationships and networking from that standpoint. And so my guidance to them was, what you are doing here this week at Expo early on in your career, I said, you are in the right place at the right time. I said, you are so much farther along than other individuals who you might see as your peers who are not here this week, because they're not making the connections that you are, that you don't even realize how they're going to pay off down the road.
Absolutely. So I think what you're saying is, because I was a mentor the first time you were there and I was a mentor this time, that I must be pretty old.
I didn't say it. You were at least old enough to be a mentor 17 years ago. Was that the
I
first
guess so.
plan?
Oh, goodness.
Were you a mentor before that too?
I might have been before that.
Was it? Okay.
I'd
Well,
have to
I can't
look at
speak
the actual years. Anyway,
to
but you know what? This actually, I think your advice is right on. Just thinking about the people who have taken the initiative to take that step, to come to Career Slam, to come to IAAPA, to put themselves in a position where they can meet new people. I think it's a great piece of advice and the great takeaway. And I have one that's sort of related to that, because so many of the people that I spoke to when we were, talking about what they want to do and things like that, it's almost like they were going down this one path and they said, but what I'd really like to do is, I said, tell me more about that. Tell me what you'd really like to do. And so again, I think, like, as they're there, finding out about the industry, it's also important to find out about themselves. So to connect with that inner nerd, or that inner feeling of where you want to go as a professional. And again, we all know that the career path is not a linear process, right? To go from, sweeper to CEO, there's a lot of different ways that can go. But figuring out those things that you're really passionate about, or I like to say, pay attention to what you pay attention to. So if you pay attention to how the ride's put together, if you're paying attention to how the team members are interacting with people, if you're paying attention to the signage, there's something in there that's telling you that's why you're drawn to that. So I think sometimes people can go on a path that other people may say is the right path, but one of the things that I enjoy talking to people about is getting to that, what do you want to do? What path do you want to take? Again, it's not going to be a linear process, but you're here. This is a great start. Listen to what Josh says about, being ahead of the curve, but now figure out where to take that passion.
Yeah. If I could piggyback off that and share one example of a conversation that I had with a mentee at Career Slam. She was talking about her area of focus, and it was it was out of my wheelhouse and out of my scope, and probably beyond my pay grade as far as from an engineering and a technical side. And she said, "This is what I'm going to school for. This is what I want to do, and I'm trying to find the right job titles to apply for." And I said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean?" She said, "Well, I'm looking for, I don't see the right job titles to apply for." And I said, why are you saying job titles? I said, you are trying to take something that is so specific and fit it into something else that is so specific. That might be there for you one day. You might have that opportunity. What I would recommend is pull back, look at the companies that specialize in that and everything that surrounds that. Go up to them on the show floor, introduce yourself. And this was late Thursday afternoon. So I said, tomorrow's Friday. They're open to talking to students on Friday, at least much more than, throughout the week. And just say, this is what I'm looking for. Does your company have either any openings or any internships to be able to get my foot in the door? You might get a job title that is different than that particular specialty, and you can still strive to grow into that, whether it's with the company that you find or if there's opportunities elsewhere. But if you are looking for, and she told me what the job title was, and it was very specific, and personally I didn't, again, it was beyond my scope of technical abilities. I would say start talking to these companies about what they do and where there are potential opportunities and how you might be able to serve in any capacity that you have, rather than saying, this is my skill set and I need to have this exact job title.
That is such good advice, because
Well,
all
thank
you're
God I
doing,
wasn't sure.
because all you're doing is you're pigeonholing yourself,
Yeah.
right? And you're really limiting your opportunities by saying, I have to go for this particular job title. I know for a long time for me, general manager was the title I was going for. And it was, I don't know if it's ironic or not, but when I got into a general manager role is when I realized that really what I wanted to do was more human resources, right? It was more about the people side of the business. And I'm sure I had to go through that journey to get there to make that realization. So it wasn't just like, I could, open up a deck of cards and say, here's the one I should have. But I think that's so insightful because there are so many different opportunities. And I'm sure you've seen this before, there are so many job titles that can be the same, but they do vastly different things, whether it's in a different industry or a different company or, different levels at a company. So yeah, I would say look for the company that maybe you want to be a part of or the type of work that they might do. But again, be open to those internships or those opportunities to get your foot in the door.
Have you ever seen the movie Soul?
I have not.
The story you said of striving for general manager and then realizing you wanted to be in human resources. I'm not going to spoil the movie, but you kind of hit the nail on the head with what the message of that movie was.
Okay.
So good. I highly recommend it to you, to anyone who's listening. It's a powerful message. So
Awesome.
anyway,
Awesome.
I think you've got one more.
I do have one more.
Okay.
Kind of an overarching umbrella topic, if you will. And it kind of goes with what you were talking about with the engineering students and the people who are studying that. And there's so many people doing that, so many people that I interacted with that, like you, they start talking about mechanical engineering and stuff. I'm like, whoa, I have no idea what you're talking about. So many people are into that. They're into the tech, they're into the AI. And there was a lot of sessions around that, a lot of booths that, were focused on new technology and new innovation. And that's always going to be there in terms of, taking the industry to the next level. But at the same point, and you probably know what I'm going to say, it's still a people industry. At the end of the day, a handshake, looking someone in the eye, making a promise and keeping the promise is so important to business that, AI, some new AI is going to come and go. Some new technology is going to come and go. They're going to build a bigger, faster, taller roller coaster. But the way you interact with people and the relationships that you build are truly what's going to propel you and create success, no matter what industry or industry segment you're in.
You may have just offended the Read AI app that's listening to our call right now, but I hope it puts it in the summary and knows that. But I agree 100,000% wholeheartedly. It's the people. And, you even mentioned it's being there in person is so powerful. And being at events like that, obviously, IAAPA Expo is the biggest event in our industry every single year. I made the realization, several years ago, sometimes it's just about showing up and just being there and meeting those people and knowing that you're not just on your LinkedIn feed. You're a real person with with real interests and sense of humor and personality, and then that leads to much stronger relationships built over time.
Well, and I think that's one of the takeaways that I always have when I meet somebody in person that I've only known through LinkedIn or through Facebook or something like that. And you do get to know their sense of humor. You do get to know kind of their likes and their dislikes. And oh, I didn't know they like this, or I didn't know that they went this way, or I didn't know they're a musician too, you know. So you start to build these connections that, again, as we've been talking about, can lead to things over time, or they can be a wonderful resource or wonderful connection, a wonderful friend, a wonderful support system, or you can be there to support them when they're going through a hard time. And that's, I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah,
Regardless of the industry, that's what it's all about.
there you go.
Yeah.
Right. I
Yeah.
think that's probably a good note to wrap up on here.
I
Uh,
think so.
I just want to thank Well, I want to thank the fans, I want to thank the audience, but also want to thank the IAAPA team. Just for I can only imagine the amount of hard work that goes into pulling off a behemoth of an expo like this year after year. And if there were any hiccups, they were barely, if at all, noticeable by the audience. They always say like, "Oh, it's there's this going on," and I'm like, "Hey, we're not seeing it. We're just hearing it. We're just in it." And the ambassador team too. I had the chance to attend the session on Wednesday afternoon. Legends who share their secrets were I was excited. I got to meet Joe Pine in person for the first time. I know we had him on the podcast. He endorsed my book. I've been a huge fan of his forever. And Margaret Carrison, Bob Weiss, just incredible people. Bob Rogers was leading the panel, and at the beginning of the session, he very casually wove in this appreciation for the ambassadors. And I can't replicate it, but all I could do while he was saying it was look at the ambassadors in the room, and they were glued to him and paying attention. And I've been in that place before, and I know how much hard work goes into it, just during the week, and also how impactful it can be for one's career. So wanted to just express that appreciation for everyone involved with pulling off a great expo.
Absolutely. And, I got to see a clip of that. I wasn't able to be in that session, and it was really heartfelt, really genuine. And I think basically saying that this is the future of the industry. And he's absolutely right.
Mhm.
I also want to make one little plug for IAAPA, I guess, and that is, if you've got an idea for a session, an edu talk, an edu session, if you have a burning desire to share a suggestion, or you've got this idea that you think will resonate with people in the audience, please fill out the application. It's online. It's on the IAAPA website. February 3rd is the deadline to submit for next year. So again, if you've got an idea, you've got a suggestion, put it out there. The association, as much as I love to speak, and I know, Josh, you'd love to speak as well, we need those fresh voices. We need, new suggestions. We need different approaches and diversity of thought throughout the industry. So if you do have an idea, put together an application and see what happens.
Do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. 100%. And then I also want to thank IAAPA for being an amazing partner with Attraction Pros. We heard the sponsor message at the beginning of the podcast, so we're really excited to be able to partner with them again, and hopefully continue that partnership into 2025 and the future.
Absolutely. So that was a pretty good wrap up of the IAAPA Expo. A lot of good stuff on there about networking and people, and understanding your impact. So I think that's a lot of great takeaways, and we'd love to hear your takeaways. So feel free to email us at attractionpros@gmail.com. Share them on the socials whenever you see this episode, and we'd just love to hear how the expo and the expo experience impacted you. So with that, it was a great wrap up, a great expo. And for everybody out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.